A pleasant day to each and every one of us. I am Rancy Ibalitar from Group 3 and I am presenting to you my topic through this recorded video presentation. So, about the integration of real life topics to the transition education. Another method of covering life skills topics is to extend the coverage of existing courses into additional meaningful life related areas. This integration could be done in two techniques. First is augmentation and infusion. So, in order for the transition education to take place, there should be an integration of real life topics to the standards or set academic or mainstream education. What is augmentation? Uh, this technique requires that additional instructional time be available to focus on life skills topics. If thoughtfully planned, such allocation of instructional time can be accomplished without sacrificing time needed to cover the topics that are explicitly stated in the course sequence. So, augmentation is like reinforcing or enhancing the existing topic by adding related topics to the existing sequence of courses. What about the infusion? Infusion is a technique uh, used in existing course content as the basis for exploring real life topics. The primary goal is to infuse real life topics directly into information being covered. In this approach, the teacher would read the passage, for example, before teaching and identify the passage content that relates to the various real life topics and then decide with which real life topics to infuse into the lesson. So we can give, in here, we can give real life scenarios or situations in which the lesson can be applied to. So, what is the purpose of transition planning? Um, the actual process of planning for the transition of students from school to life after school is complex. Complex in a sense that it should be scientifically formulated and mechanized for the academic lesson to make sense to the real life situation. For transition to be done effectively, it requires that the key people should be actively involved. So, who are these people that should be actively involved in the transition planning? So, of course, the student himself, the parents, relatives, friends, teachers that are closely related to the student. All players involved in this transition process must share the responsibility for ensuring that it transpires successfully. Say, for example, in a driving 101 course. So, at first, the student will learn the theory of driving, the, the parts of a vehicle, how they function, what are their functions, the work of different parts of the vehicle. Then that um, that theory will only be successful once the teacher will help the student apply what the student has learned from the theory of driving. So until the student will be able to drive on the road and drive independently with the help of the teacher by his side, so that's the time that um, we can say that the student has learned or has transitioned from the theory of learning to the real life application of it. So of course, with the presence of the key people, uh, uh, related or would help the student to learn or transition from the theoretical learning to the life application of the learned skills. Okay, the primary objective of this process is a seamless transition or a smooth transition from academic to real life situation to post-school setting and everyday living, characterized by being able to deal successfully with the demands of adulthood. Individual Education Plan, or what we call the IEP, the process of documenting the extent of the success of the transition process. So, what are the key elements of transition planning process? So, this includes proactive transition education. So, it means from the very beginning of the process, there is already the integration of the real life um, topics or lessons. Comprehensive transition needs assessment. So, this is very important to really know um, the needs or the goals that must be set for the student or learner who is transitioning from school to after school. In depth of selected areas, transition planning, of course, after the assessment, instructional goal setting, and linkage goal setting. So, for the proactive transition education, this refers to the real life topics. It refers to the coverage of adult reference topics across levels of transitioning. So it means that the topics from the beginning to the end phase of the uh, academic level has already the integration of real life um, topics. This is different from OTJ or on-the-job training, wherein the student will only learn um, uh, the the practical application of something at the end or when that student is almost graduating. So in the proactive transition education, we start giving the integrating already the real life situation across the levels of academic experience of the student. Um, this serves as the formal phase of transition planning process. So the comprehensive transition needs assessment serves as the formal phase of the transition planning process. The general areas in which a transition needs assessment should focus includes a range of transition planning areas such as community participation, daily living, employment, financial and income management, health, independent living includes living arrangements, leisure and recreation, post-secondary education, relationship and social skills, transportation, and vocational training. So, now let's go to the in-depth assessment of selected areas. The result of comprehensive transition needs assessment should lead to the development of transition related goals. So in the in-depth assessment, this serves as the basis for the formulation of transition and related goals. However, the comprehensive assessment can still lead to more in-depth information to really uh, assess the transition needs of an individual. It is usually a cycle of assessment from comprehension to in-depth until we can successfully identify the real needs for the transition um, goals of the student. Yan. However, in some cases, results will lead to the recognition that more in-depth information is needed. Now let's go to transition planning. This phase, the actual transition planning phase comprises goal development and should illuminate two different types of goals and a number of activities that are needed to accomplish the goal. So this phase, in this phase, um, this is the result of the comprehensive and in-depth assessment. In here, the goal should be clear, should be clearly reflected, and the activities would illuminate or would really reflect what the goals, uh, the set goals are for the learners to be ready for the transition education. So instructional goals, teaching of knowledge, skills. These goals focus in knowledge and skills needed in academic, social, and behavioral areas. These goals should be written in the IEP or individual education plan. In this phase, knowledge acquisition and skills development are the primary goals of the teaching process. These goals emphasize the linkage needed services and supports, and uh, these goals may be quick action items like phone call to place one's name on a waiting list, or they may be more elaborated activities like going through the process of selecting an appropriate post post-school training program. Assessing transition needs is a thorough assessment of a student transition needs that should lead to the development of transition goals. So we should keep in mind that the different factors that might give an impact to this while assessing the transition needs. So like the cultural background, family, diversity, values, gaps. So we have to clearly determine them so that we can be sure that the transition needs of students uh, are properly assessed. And the last but not the least is the transition goals. So according here, transition goals that will serve as guide for the student, family, and school in preparing student for post-school life. These transition goals should be based on the present levels of performance of students. So this ends the part of our report as a group. So I hope that you have learned something from what I have presented to you all. So thank you and God bless us all.